everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet this lacy tablecloth. It looks beautiful in these pastel colors, but of course you can make it in any colors for any season that you want to. It measures about 12 inches across and about 32 inches long, but it's a simple 3-row repeating pattern, and you can make it as long as you want. If you have a really long table, you might want to make it a lot longer, or maybe to go across the back of a piano. It's a beautiful lacy pattern, but it's also an easy pattern. Now you can find this free crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To make the lacy table runner, you're going to need some yarn, of course. And I used Just My Stripe by Lion Brand, and it has 3 ounces on it, and you only need about 3 to 3.5 ounces to make the pattern according to what I have written. Of course, if you're going to make it longer, you're going to need more yarn. We're going to be stitching today with an eye, which is a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle, and of course you'll need a pair of scissors. Now, this runner can be made with any medium number 4 weight yarn. And although I'm using this acrylic, a cotton will work as well. Just make sure it's a medium number 4 weight yarn. So the table runner measures about 12 inches wide, and it also measures about 32 inches long. Now, 3 chains equal approximately 1 inch, and 1 row measures approximately 1 inch as well. We're going to begin with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 47 chains. Now, it's important to not stitch this beginning chain too tightly, or the end of your runner might be just a little bit puckered up. I've chained my 47 chains, and we're going to begin by stitching a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to stitch a double crochet in each stitch across. Yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. And we'll stitch 1 double crochet in each of these chains, working all the way across. I've stitched 1 double crochet in each of the chains across. And those first 3 chains counted as 1 double crochet. So we have 45 double crochets. We're going to chain 3 and turn. And on this project, chain 3 counts as the first double crochet on every row. We're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And chain 1. On this next row, row 2, we're going to stitch shell stitches. Our shell stitch consists of 5 double crochets stitched in the same stitch. We're going to skip the first 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and stitch a double crochet in the next stitch, and then we'll stitch 4 more, so we'll have 5 double crochets for our shell stitch. and chain 1. And we'll repeat this working across this row. We chained 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip those 4 stitches and stitch a shell stitch in the next. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 double crochets in the same stitch for our shell stitch and chain 1. And repeat. Skip the next 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 double crochets in the next stitch for our shell stitch. Chain 1 and repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, shell stitch in the next stitch, chain 1, and we'll continue to repeat this across until we have 7 shell stitches. I stitched my shell stitches across and I have 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shell stitches. Chain 1, we're going to skip the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and stitch 1 double crochet in those last 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And remember, the chain 3 right here is your first stitch or your last stitch to stitch in on this row. But it's the first stitch on row 1. All right, chain 3 and turn. So we have 7 shell stitches, and then we have 3 double crochets at the beginning and ending of our rows. Our chain 3 counts is our first double crochet, and then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in those 2 double crochets and chain 1. Now we're going to stitch what's called an open shell stitch, and we're going to stitch it in the center double crochet of our next shell stitch. We have 5 double crochets, and so we're going to stitch in the third double crochet of those 5. So we'll go in and we'll stitch a double crochet. We're going to chain 1, stitch another double crochet, chain 1, and stitch another double crochet, all in that same stitch, and then chain 1. And that's called an open shell stitch because we chained 1 instead of stitching double crochets in our second and fourth stitch of our 5 stitches. Chain 1, and then we're going to repeat across. We'll go to that third double crochet of our next shell stitch, and we'll stitch a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet, and then chain 1, and we'll just repeat this, working all the way across, stitching an open shell stitch in the third stitch of each of those shell stitches. And we'll repeat this all the way across in each of these shell stitches, stitching a chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1, or chain 1, open shell stitch, chain 1, repeating across. I completed this row stitching 1 open shell stitch, chain 1 in each of my shell stitch, stitching in that center double crochet, and again you're going to have 7. Our last chain 1, and then 1 double crochet in each of those 3 double crochets on the end. and then chain 3. And we'll turn. Now for row 4, we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in the next 2. Then we'll stitch 2 chains instead of 1, and we're going to go to the center double crochet of that open shell stitch and stitch a V-stitch. So we'll go in, stitch a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And then we'll chain 2 instead of 1. And so what we're doing for row 4 is we're chain 2, stitch a V-stitch in that center double crochet of our open double crochet, chain 2. And that's what the repeat is working across for row 4. Chain 2, V-stitch in the top of that double crochet in the center there of our open double crochet or our open shell stitch, chain 2. And so we'll repeat this across, stitching 1 in each so that we have 7 V-stitches with chain 2s in between. So I finished stitching a V-stitch, chain 2 in each of the center double crochets of my open shell stitches. Here's my last V-stitch, chain 2, and again you're going to have 7 V-stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, chain 2, and then 1 double crochet in each of those last 3 double crochets, and chain 3. Now we're going to go back to stitching our regular shell stitch. So our chain 3 counts is our first double crochet. We'll double crochet in the next 2. And I think you know by now that at the beginning of each row we're going to have 3 double crochets together. We're going to chain 1, and what we're going to do is stitch our shell stitch right in that chain 1 space of our V-stitch. So we'll go right in there and stitch 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we stitched it right in the chain 1 space of our first V-stitch. Chain 1 and repeat. 5 double crochets, which is our regular shell stitch that we're using for this pattern. And we're stitching that shell stitch right in the chain 1 space of each of the V-stitches. Chain 1, and we'll repeat this all the way across, stitching our shell stitch in the V-stitch, the chain 1 space of the V-stitch, with a chain 1 in between, working all the way across. I've completed that row of shell stitches with chain 1s in between, and again you're going to have 7 shell stitches, and your count's going to remain the same. You're going to always be placing them in the same spot throughout this project with your 3 double crochets at the beginning and end of each row. Alright, so we're going to chain 3 and turn. And now we're going to do those open shell stitches again. So 1 double crochet in the next 2 stitches, chain 1, and we'll stitch our open shell stitch like we did here on row 3. So we're just repeating row 3. double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Our open shell stitch again is a double crochet with chain 1s in between so that it's open. Chain 1 and repeat. And so what we're doing for row 6 is we're just repeating row 3, stitching our open shell stitches with chain 1s in between, moving all the way across our row. I completed this row of open shell stitches, chain 1, 1 double crochet in those last 3, chain 3, and turn. So on this row, we're going to repeat row 4, just like we did our V stitches. So our chain 3 again counts as our first double crochet. We're going to double crochet in the next 2. We're going to chain 2 and stitch that double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, which is our V stitch, in that center double crochet of our open shell stitch. Chain 2 and stitch a V stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in that center double crochet of our open shell stitch, and chain 2 and repeat all the way across. I think now you can see how the repeat of rows is going to work for our table runner. You're going to do a row of shells in the chain 1 space of our V stitches. Then you'll do open shells in that single double crochet of our shell stitch, and then you'll do V stitches in that single double crochet of the open shell stitch, and repeat. And so what you're going to do is you're going to repeat these 3 rows alternating 1 2 3 1 2 3 for 23 more rows. And that's if you want it to be about a 32-inch long table runner. If you want your table runner to be longer, you can continue to repeat these 3 rows until it's the length that you want. Now you need to end on your V stitch, and then we're going to do a row of solid double crochets. I've completed my table runner doing those repeats, shell, open shell, V-stitch, shell, open shell, V-stitch, repeating until I reached row 31. And of course, if you decided to make yours longer, you're going to have more rows. We just want to make sure that you end on a V-stitch row. So I ended on that V-stitch row, chain 3, and turn. And the last thing that we need to do is just put a row of solid double crochets so that it has a nice edge to it, like this side does where we started, where we have our nice double crochet row across the bottom. That way it gives it a nice finish. So we're going to place that double crochet in the first 2 double crochets, because again, our chain 3 counts is our first double crochet. Then we're going to place 2 double crochets in that chain 2 space. And that chain 2 space was created because we chained 2. Then we're going to place a double crochet in the double crochet, a double crochet in the chain 1 space of our V-stitch, and then a double crochet in the double crochet. And this is the way we'll repeat across. 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, 1 double crochet in the double crochet, 1 double crochet in the chain 1 space, 1 double crochet in the double crochet, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, And we'll just repeat that, working all the way across this row. 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, 1 double crochet in the double crochet, 1 double crochet in the chain 1 space, and 1 double crochet in the next double crochet, and 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. And we'll work this all the way across this row. So I've completed that row of a nice even row of double crochets, and I'm to the end here, and I'm going to place 1 double crochet in those last 3 double crochets. Then I'm going to tie off my yarn, so I'll cut it and tie off. And then we'll grab a needle and weave in this end. So the table runner is now completed. It's nice and long, about 32 inches long, about 12 inches wide, and I think this pattern is perfect for any yarn colors and any season or holiday that you want to do, or even just to fancy up your dresser.